Award. That's very exciting. Can you tell us why you were awarded the Gold Award today?
I think it was because of my patients.
Tell us a little bit about your work.
I actually was interested in hydrocephalus of children in 1970, and I wanted to know whether veins play a part in this condition.
And how did you make the switch from hydrocephalus to a new
This
avenue of
was in 1981 in Salzburg. I simply tried to find out whether large venous openings of the skull cause cerebrospinal fluid hypotension syndromes and too narrow openings, hypotensive intracranial hypertension, hypotensive hydrocephalus.
So what was your hypothesis?
I thought there are two dangers to the brain. The one is venous obstruction by itself, which causes stasis, and this results in the damming up of blood, a plethora, we call it, plethora.
And what does that do? What's the result?
If it takes a higher degree, a more severe degree, you get edema, and if it becomes more severe still, then you get hemorrhagic infarction. And this is everywhere the same, in the brain and in the leg. From the leg, you see it the best.
And when you recognize that that's the problem, how can it be managed?
Obstruction is already managed. They already measure the transstenotic pressure gradients in stenosis of the lateral sinuses. And if they exceed 10 millimeters of mercury, they balloon the stenosis or put in stents, and then hydrocephalus, the symptoms are greatly improved or disappear.
And tell me how your work interrelates with all of the CCSVI research that's taking place here.
I actually had a far simpler idea from pathology. I was not allowed to study veins in MS autopsies. And so I had to collect the literature and the evidence on the paper, and then I found that all the evidence from 1831 to the most recent MR imaging in MS clearly shows that the damage must be by a hitting back of blood into the inner cerebral veins, and this must be via the straight sinus.
And so how is that different from some of the other hypotheses that are being advanced today?
They try to make a compromise to the current conventions of MS. And my idea is too much contrast to the present interpretation of MS, because all treatments of MS are founded on the ADAM EAE model. And here the damage advances in exactly the opposite direction to MS. In MS, you have the spreading of the lesion from the ventricular border in direction of the cortex. And in ADAM and EAE, you have the spreading of the lesions from the cortex, subcortical area, white matter, in direction of the ventricles.
But your work has a broader impact than MS, correct?
Of course. I think the hitting back of blood into the superior sagittal sinus, if it attains a massive degree, it can cause schizophrenia. Especially in young patients, there's evidence, because the lesion development in schizophrenia has been far better documented than in MS. And this shows an advancing and broadening of the lesion from the occiput in direction of the front. And it's exactly centered by the superior sagittal sinus. And it seems to be more intense along the trolar vein, the superior communicating vein, and the Labé vein, the inferior communicating vein. So it looks as though there was also a reflux in the superior sagittal sinus, which can be dangerous and disastrous, actually.
And so what is being done today using your theories and your hypotheses and the research that you've done in terms of practical application? I mean, is that being used today?
Zamboni did a great start because he was the first who studied what I had tried to do at the postmortem in living patients, at least in the extracranial segment. He couldn't study the confluence of sinuses, and I wanted to do the whole story. I wanted to check the veins, to inject both jugular veins with different colors up to the confluence of sinuses, and to look where the blood is distributed, which is driven back into these main passages.
So your work is really the precursor to everything that's happening with CCS.
I hope it will bring improvements not only in MS.
And would you say that Dr. Zamboni's research used your work as a basis?
I contacted him in 2002, and I asked him not to mention my name because I had made such bad experiences. And he asked me for a lot of literature. He got 250 pages article of Fogg. I sent him the paper, and I scanned shorter works in my computer, and then I sent it per email.
So you were a behind-the-scenes collaborator.
I worked behind the scene, and he was exposed.
And look at the result it's had.
Yes, it has.
What's the most critical takeaway of your work, Dr. Schelling?
I think evaluations for CCSVI can be much more simplified and better focused if we look at the lesion patterns. It's easy in the brain because it's clear it must be the straight sinus. And then if you have a continuous monitoring of flow in the straight sinus in difficult cases which don't improve, you see you have reflux, and you can find out which movements and which activities cause this reflux, because the interaction of muscle is very complex. And there are in fact sometimes 4 pumps from which the blood can be driven in the direction of the brain. It's the 2 jugular veins and the 2 cervical veins, which can be equally or even larger than the jugular veins.
So are you still doing research along these lines?
I try. I get many CDs of MS patients to study, and it's very time-consuming. The quality is never as I would like it to be, but I try to make the best of the individual situation.
What else would you like to tell us today before we let you go?
I think the most important thing is to have more MR studies on the MS of the spinal cord. We need a better focusing of the examination. We need a higher spatial resolution. And the most important thing, we need to have good temporal resolution in monitoring subarachnoid fluid displacements along the spinal canal.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Frank, am I missing anything?
No, just maybe we live in an exciting time, technology. How has technology made your...
Without MR imaging, my situation would have been hopeless, because nobody was interested. Even with this whole MR evidence, it confirmed exactly what was found at postmortem between 1831 and the present time. And MR imaging showed exactly the same what was found in the postmortem studies, and it had the possibility to do in vivo studies. You could watch the lesion development in the spinal cord. Until now it's not sufficient, but in the brain it's quite well.